Hello friends, today we're going to be looking at Venus in the sign of Virgo, and Venus will be here until August 7th. It makes its ingress on July 9th. And I'm going to make another video looking at all the aspects of Venus while in the sign of Virgo. But today I just want us to look at Venus and Virgo. It's a significant placement, especially because Venus is debilitated here. And the first thing I want to do, I want to draw our minds away from debilitations meaning something bad, or that it's something unfortunate. The way I want us to think about debilitations in general, that we're talking about symbolic mismatch. And that's because every planet has its own natural way of expressing itself and being itself. But every zodiac sign is representing a kind of an environment that has its own priorities, values, and ways of interacting with reality. It's kind of an epistemology, a way of knowing reality. And sometimes when a planet comes into a sign, they have such good synergy. There's such great cooperation between them because they generally do the same thing. And then there are times where they are in opposition to each other. And that's when we're talking about debilitations. They have different objectives. And when a planet comes into a sign where the planet's debilitated, the sign is not supporting the quality of that planet. So the planet's being suppressed or it's being pushed down in terms of what it is that it wants to express naturally. This is kind of like taking someone who has an engineering mind, who's very logical and rational, and then asking them, I want you to paint something very intuitively from your place of intuition. They're going to glitch out. This is a planet that is being asked to speak a language that is not of its own native language, so has a hard time expressing itself. And this month, we have this with Venus in the sign of Virgo. We've had it so far with Saturn in the sign of Aries, but now we get another debilitation. And the next one will be Mars in the sign of Cancer. But in this video, we're going to address why is it that Virgo, or how is it that it creates difficulty for a planet of connection, union, love, beauty. And when we experience this via transit, or if we have this signature in our birth chart, what is it trying to teach us? Why this modality in this moment? What are we to extract from it? And as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to come back and talk about Venus and the aspects that it'll be making, which will be with Uranus, Mercury, and Mars, while in the sign of Virgo. I also want to let you know, I have a few videos about this placement of Venus in the sign of Virgo, and especially one that is Venus and K2, because as soon as Venus comes into the sign of Virgo, it's going to be conjunct K2. And this is going to be for the last time for the next 18 and a half years where K2 and Venus are going to be conjunct in Virgo. And if you want to understand what that meaning is for the last time, I'll link that video in the description box below so you guys can check it out. But if you want to catch the new videos, please do remember to subscribe. Press that notification bell so YouTube notifies you when the videos are released. And now I just want to take a brief moment to talk about Venus. I want us to go through the layers so that we understand the logic of this discussion. And the first thing I want to say about Venus, we can think of Venus as the principle of attraction. It has this magnetism that it attracts things to itself. And how does Venus attract things to itself? Like, think about it. We beautify ourselves, our environment. So we draw things to ourselves. The concept of relationship is about drawing things together. Venus represents harmony. To harmonize things is to draw them together and then bring them into the right proportion. So Venus is talking about this willingness, some force in existence, where things move towards each other and the ultimate objective is to unify and to merge. And when we think about it, this is the feeling of love. Like, I am like you are like me, we're so much alike. The concept of pleasure is to merge with some external experience through our senses. This is Venus. Venus represents our sensory system and this concept of pleasure. Comfort also belongs to Venus. It belongs to Moon too, but in a different way. Like, the comfort of Venus is that sensual, sensory pleasure. We just get sunk into our experience and then we get ourselves into that state of flow. This is very much related to Venus. We become one with time, with occurrence, and there's just a sense of oneness between the self and the external happenings. And that in itself is a beautiful feeling. Again, Venus represents beauty. Venus also represents affection, intimacy, the aesthetics of things, art, our sense of taste and style. It's all coming from Venus. So when we have a very prominent, positive, dignified Venus in our chart, we have this power of attraction. this magnetism that can come naturally, almost to a degree that we can take it for granted, because when a planet's exalted or in its own sign, it can become kind of lazy and take things for granted that it has this power. But when we bring it into the sign of Virgo, as you'll see, one is becoming very conscious of these things because they don't easily come to us and they don't exist without effort. Like Venus dignified, it can attract finer things into its life without too much effort. So it doesn't force Venus to be forceful to get what it wants. A well-placed Venus operates on the premise of invitation rather than force and effort. And I also want us to realize psychologically, Venus is dealing with our values. And I've said this in another video, not values like the way Jupiter represents our values in terms of our morals and ethics, but what is valuable. Venus is concerned about the value of one thing relative to another thing. And we can see this in its own domicile and its own sign of Libra, which has a lot to do with equality, exchange. And Venus wants this equality because it's trying to establish union and relationships. So things that are alike have an affinity and an attraction to each other, and Venus needs to determine this. And I want you to know Mercury very much helps Venus to do this, and Mercury and Venus are never that far apart. But ultimately, it's Venus's job to merge them and to unify them. And this value is about understanding what we're attracted to, what it is that we desire to attract to us. So this is how Venus comes to represent things that we value, qualities that we value. And it's important for us to understand this aspect of Venus within us and what it is that we value, because those are the things we're going to attract into our lives. And those are the things that are eventually and ultimately going to shape our lives, what it is that we unify with. Now, let's briefly go over the sign of Virgo just to get a feel for this sign as well, before we bring Venus into the sign of Virgo. And the first thing I want us to realize, this is Mercury's sign, Mercury's exaltation. And Mercury's job is to differentiate, to distinguish, and to name things. In fact, our reality becomes knowable to us through Mercury. And again, that's because Mercury allows us to differentiate one thing from another thing. Like, this is a light bulb, this is a chair, therefore the chair is not a light bulb, and vice versa. So when we talk about Virgo as Mercury's sign, we're talking about an environment that's like a hyper calculator. It becomes excellent at analysis because it's doing this discernment, differentiation, distinction. That's the nature of the sign in itself. Virgo is a sign, when we go into it, we get into this modality of comparing and contrasting things, observing, measuring, organizing, categorizing, classifying. And all of it is meant to create improvement. It's about improving things. Because this sign is constantly asking, what makes this thing work? What's working? What's not working? This is the refinement aspect of existence. This is evolution too, when you think about it. It's constantly refining by making certain things obsolete and then seeing what upgrades work, and then it starts to accentuate that. So nature by itself is the greatest accountant, and it is kind of like Virgo. And there's another component too. This is an earth sign, so it's not making abstract improvements. It's very practical improvements, things that qualitatively and quantitatively are improving things and making things better in terms of more efficient and more productive. So here, knowledge can't be abstract. It has to be with an application. It's going to have a protocol. And I want us to think about something else. Virgo can become very proficient at having a skill because it is constantly consumed in this process of understanding and refinement. So we find people who are very skillful. Craftsmanship is great here, technical skills. The sign is smart. This is Mercury's sign, and Mercury represents the intellect. Like, this is a sign where it can see details, the minutiae of things that other people don't even care about. They can't even see it. So it's giving this sign the gift of precision. And again, the purpose is for improvement, not to be nitpicky and just a weirdo. And I want us to realize that this ruler, Mercury, has a lot to do with symmetry, like two things being identical. And there's another thing, there's a progression to the signs. We go from the sign of Virgo into the sign of Libra. Like, someone's got to do the accounting in the sign of Virgo so that things are organized, so that by the time we go into the sign of Libra, we can start to have that equal thing that's happening there, have a sense of equality. But that's a topic for another day. But now let's bring Venus into the sign of Virgo. And as I was mentioning, Venus is a planet related to our five senses, and it has everything to do with our experience of our sensory life, sensual experiences of life, like the things that you taste, the beautiful sense or the disgusting sense, they're all coming through Venus. And if we think about it, the things that we take pleasure in are the things that we appreciate. And this notion of appreciation comes from Venus itself. Now, as I just mentioned, Virgo understands and experiences life through evaluation. Like Venus is going to ask, what's here to be appreciated? What's beautiful? What's lovely? And then Virgo is going to look at it and say, well, what needs improvements here? Something's flawed. Something's not categorized and classified in the right way. Like Venus will be content with just standing in front of a painting and admiring it. But Virgo right away is going to notice the brush strokes and it's going to be like, well, this one is not the same as that one. So it's disturbing the flow of the painting. It will find the fault and the flaw with it. And in reality, we can't say one is better than the other. Like we need analysis and we need a sense of appreciation. And they're both necessary, but they are so fundamentally different that when you put them together, they start to glitch out. Like Venus is like, let me just sit here and enjoy. Like, I just want to enjoy myself. I want to Netflix, eat a little bit of junk food and just enjoy the sight and the senses. But Virgo can't even come to sit until the entire environment is set properly. Everything needs to be improved. Everything needs to be in the right dishes. Everything needs to be clean before we can sit down and enjoy things. So as you can see, they create natural tension in each other. And this is because Venus's need for appreciation is constantly interrupted by analysis and overanalysis of Virgo. Love is becoming interrupted by evaluation. Love is a state of merging, is about letting go. Virgo wants to put its hands on it and start indexing and start separating things from each other. This is pleasure becoming interrupted by optimization of this sign. Beauty is constantly being interrupted by criticism. And of course, one of the biggest problems with Venus in the sign of Virgo is that love is becoming interrupted by impossible standards that Virgo sets. And it's setting those standards because it's seeing the minutia and the details of things and how they are related and unrelated to each other. So it's trying to perfect and improve things. Like Venus in Virgo can't let go to just experience another person. Suddenly they're measuring the person. Like they have a list. This is their good stuff. This is their bad stuff. And this creates problem, right? You become too cerebral. You're thinking too much. Someone's hugging you. And as a Virgo quality, it's like trying to assess what kind of a hug it is. Well, just let go, give in to the hug. It might transform into another kind of hug, but it's just stuck up in the head, constantly questioning things. And the problem with Virgo is a lot of his questions about how things are unfinished. What kind of work do they require to become perfected, better, more functional, more optimal? And we can't think that way about love and beauty. So when we think about Venus's debilitation, is talking about these kinds of problems. We're bringing too much thinking into the realm of senses and feelings. And Venus, like the moon, has a lot to do with feelings because Venus is also of the water element. The thinking is irritating the sensations. The intellect is hijacking all of our sensual experiences. It's making Venus's need for comfort to feel very uncomfortable. Can almost feel a little uptight when it comes to the Venetian topics. But let's just bring this closer now to the transit that we have right now and see what are some of the things we can expect from this combination. And one of the things I want us to take note of is this idea of criticism. Criticism of ourselves or criticizing other people. Like Venus in Virgo can start questioning other people's appearance. It can start questioning our relationships, things that we or others enjoy. Everything's being scrutinized, everything that's supposed to be pleasurable. And there can be this feeling that nothing is enough because as human beings, we're searching for that feeling of pleasure, comfort, beauty, joy. But that analysis, cerebral part of it is not allowing us to feel those things. So it's like we want it and we're engaging with it, but we can't extract the feeling from it. So there's this feeling things are not perfect, things are not good enough. That's why I can't feel it. And then there's another thing here that we should be aware of too. This is a very perfectionist sign because it's always trying to improve things and refine things. And unfortunately, perfectionism can hide itself as responsibility. And this is because this is an earth sign and it has this practical thing. So it can give you an excuse like, I'm criticizing you, I'm telling you what's wrong with you because I want you to be better. These kinds of things, this kind of language and this kind of thinking usually doesn't help us in most relationships. It's like this sign, this placement of Venus in Virgo, sometimes it's lost on it that, yes, your intent is good, that you want to criticize another person because you want to make things better. But the other person is just receiving it as rejection. The other person feels like I'm not good enough. I can't be received as I am. And they're feeling that because Venus in Virgo has a hard time receiving things as they are. Reciprocity can't be established until things are perfected. And again, going back to that cerebral component, another thing is like feeling love intellectually or mentally. And I'm going to say it's possible to love someone mentally and intellectually is a different feeling than with the heart. But there's a problem with cerebral love. Because ultimately what happens, we're categorizing, we're differentiating, and we're comparing. That's what's happening. And in that way, we have no choice but to become eternal accountants at some point. So it's keeping count of all the things that another person that I love them because they showed up for me when I was sick. When I had a craving, it's been 5 times in a row now that they go and get me the gummy bears. So it's keeping count of how much other people have done for it in order to have this sense of love and connection. And if you think about it in the long run of life, this is one definition or one form of the unhealthiest kind of relationship we can have. Because this kind of relationship can become very transactional. Like, I took out the garbage, therefore you should love me. I've done all this stuff for you, therefore you should have this enormous sense of care for me. Not understanding those things come from within other people and within ourselves. No external transaction can determine it. And we know this because sometimes we fall in love with certain people and we're like, in hindsight, it's like, what exactly did I fall in love with? But you just love them. But if you were doing this transactional thing, you would never love them. So Venus in Virgo can make heartfelt connections feel a little bit off because of this. And we should be aware of it during this transit. Are we like doing this whole accounting thing right now in our relationships? And look at which house is it in. Is it in the 7th house? It's talking about your marriage. 5th house, your romantic partners. 10th house, your work environment. 4th house, your family. In general, it just feels petty in a lot of ways because we're keeping score just unconsciously and consciously. And when you think about it, there are probably no more irritating fights that, let's say, a couple can have when they're talking about who contributed more, who apologized first, who invested more effort. It's like everyone has their role and everybody's doing their best and we're moving life forward and that's what counts. But no, it becomes a tit for tat kind of a game. These are the moments where we should really pause if we find ourselves doing such things, when we're getting lost in our head, to pause and ask, do I love this person? Or am I in this relationship because I just expect it to meet my expectations? So our relational dynamics with Venus, because Venus is a planet of relationships, can glitch out a little bit. But when it comes to our own personal selves, let's say in our environment, another glitchiness can come through also, which is beauty becomes hard to experience. And that's because in the sign of Virgo, we're supposed to fix things and refine things. So our attention automatically goes to what is flawed. So instead of appreciating beauty in ourselves, we just got dressed up, we got our nails done, we got our hair done. And we're like, instead of saying, I look good, now it's like nitpicking. The color just turned out awful. This nail is shorter than the other one. We got to become aware, am I creating this compulsion in myself just to make things better? Or am I able to get comfortable in it and just enjoy it a little bit? In general, the Venus within us, the Venetian aspect of our lives, can suffer a bit when we have this combination because it's ending up in a analytical environment. Like Venus in the sign of Pisces is exalted because the environment of Pisces in itself is about lack of differentiation. And I want us to actually, let me just take a side note here to explain something. In the Vedic traditions, both Venus and Jupiter are benefics. Venus is called Shukra, Jupiter is called Brihaspati. Shukra and Brihaspati have a deep relationship. They both had the same teacher, and their teacher is actually Jupiter's father, Brihaspati's father. And at some point, Shukra departs from Jupiter and his father, which is Venus's teacher, because Shukra felt that there was a sense of discrimination in terms of not having enough equality, as if Jupiter was favored by his teacher. Shukra, Venus, expected the teacher to be unbiased and to teach them the same, not to have favoritism towards his own son. So this was kind of like they're drifting apart. But this is telling us something. Between the two benefics, Jupiter has a greater power of discernment and it's more discriminating. Even though Jupiter is often not discussed that way, because everything Jupiter touch, apparently it expands, and that's not true. Jupiter is a system expander. So if something's part of a system, it will expand that part of the system. And whatever that's there, it's going to expand. But Jupiter requires coherence. That's what I mean about systems. Venus can actually be a little indiscriminate compared to Jupiter as a benefic. It'll bring pleasure to anyone. And in the Vedic traditions, Venus, Shukra, is the guru of the Asuras, the underworld entities, while Jupiter is the teacher of the gods, of the overworld. So Venus functions better where there is equality, where there's lack of discrimination, like in the sign of Pisces going to its exaltation. It can create that merged state and it can unify things the way that it wants to. Virgo is the opposite sign to the sign of Pisces. Virgo, everything segmented, separated. It's about separating things and differentiating things. It's like the exact opposite function of Venus. This is like bringing the most voluptuous planet under the scalpel of Virgo. It's going to burst its bubble. It just dices and opens up Venus in a very unpleasant way. That's why when we get the transits too, some of our experiences here can be a little bit dicey. But existence never makes a mistake. It doesn't put Venus in Virgo because it just wants to torment us and make us do something against our own nature. So the question becomes, what is the purpose of Venus in the sign of Virgo and how do we work with it? And I would say, the signs are indicators of very strong environments. You can't change them. They kind of like, I've said this in another video, they hand a script to the planet and they're like, this is your role now. You need to play this role. Yeah, you can bring your own nature and your own character, but this is the role. And when you come into the sign of Virgo, you're supposed to analyze things. You don't have a choice. And we shouldn't want to change the nature of Virgo because having the power of discernment is one of the more extraordinary powers that we have. So I would say the lesson here is for us to discern when analysis actually serves love instead of using analysis to replace love. Like, for example, coming to the basics, something that we should be aware of is to know whether if we're improving something or we're just criticizing something. Like, am I refining a relationship or through all of this criticizing and bringing up the details, am I trying to control it? And I would say a lot of the control freakery of Virgo actually comes when we have Saturn and Mars here. But with Venus too, because it doesn't feel comfortable and because it feels inefficient and it feels that things are not good enough, it has to control the variables to a great degree to be able to feel itself located and positioned. So this notion of control can come into play with Venus here too. I would say this combination exists because we're trying to learn. Appreciation and refinement in this life have to work together. Like, you don't want to appreciate your gym shirt that you've been wearing 10 times in a row. There has to be some sense of refinement to come back to appreciate that shirt again, which is to do our laundry. So refinement and appreciation do go hand in hand in this life, in this human life. There's another contrast that we're trying to understand with this signature, which is about balance versus indulgence. Because Venus by itself can very much indulge. And Virgo, because there's always a flaw, it cannot indulge. It's just, there's a sense of dissatisfaction with this sign because of this nature that's in this sign. And when we bring them together, they can actually work really well together. For example, we don't necessarily need to improve love But if we love enough, we'll want to improve. Like we will want to remove our vices so that we even remain healthy, so that our partner one day, they don't have to have the burden of taking care of us if we're sick. And this in itself brings a sense of appreciation through refinement. So even though they have these friction, glitchy components towards each other, the sign and the planet here, they can actually work together and teach us very nuanced, refined kind of ways of being in the world. And I think probably one of the greatest lessons that we get from this combination is that not everything valuable has to be perfect. Like a cup made by hand is supposed to have imperfections. It's not supposed to look like it came out of a machine. Old friendships are going to come with a bunch of misunderstandings over the years. There are blotches, black blotches over the story of this friendship because of the fact that it's lasted for so many years and human beings are being their imperfect human selves. Like if you've been married to someone, it's going to be full of disagreements. Everything's flawed in this life. There's no such thing as perfection. Even the most beautiful face that comes into this world is going to get old and it's going to lose that appearance. Even things that may appear perfect, becoming flawed is its destiny. So imperfection is part of the human condition. Virgo will work tirelessly, try to perfect things, try to make things better, refine it again. And I think the lesson here is that when Venus, the planet of love, comes into Virgo, is telling us that love matures when it learns to distinguish between imperfection that requires attention and imperfection that simply makes something real. Reality has a lot of flaws in it, but it is those things that makes it unique. It makes it lovable and even makes it beautiful in some ways because it's something now the senses can experience as something distinct. And our sensory input wants that always, and that's Venus. Like Venus in Virgo, when it gets really mature, when it's in ultimate state of adulthood and its own wisdom, it can sit, it can look around it in the most plain environments, and it can see the beauty of that. And that is one of the hardest things to do in our society because everything needs bells and whistles. But put a Venus in Virgo in a desert with nothing around it, it'll be looking at the grains of sand. It can distinguish one from another and see the beauty in every single one of them. It can be captivated by the world. And you know what? Maybe true refinement isn't about like, I need to remove every flaw from everything. It's about understanding which flaws actually deserve our attention. And which flaws in this life are just about acceptance. And Venus in Virgo, I was saying that Venus can be indiscriminate. It can accept anyone because it can see the beauty in anyone eventually. And I would say Venus enters the sign of Virgo every year and it becomes debilitated because this is something we human beings need a lot of practice in this life to master it, which is, can you constantly improve yourself and your life without losing the ability to love yourself and to love your life? Because looking at flaws, it doesn't mean we have to discard things. Looking at flaws, it doesn't mean something's bad. Something can have many flaws and we can still love that thing. And that thing could be ourselves. We don't have to toss it out. We can improve it and still love it. And I would say that every debilitation is trying to accomplish something similar, not just Venus in Virgo. It wants to teach us the deeper meaning of that planet, its function as part of existence that's been invested in us. So if you have a debilitation in your chart, life is making you work a little bit harder to understand what Venus is, what true love is, in a sense. Because to gain that ability to see every grain of sand for what it is and see its beauty, even though it's just sand, you have exceptional power. You understand the unity of things and the difference of things better than anyone else. So all of the debilitated planets we might have, they're trying to cultivate their quality within us so that we perfect it and we become better. And now we're getting to the end of this video. And before ending it, I would like to ask you to please like, share, and subscribe. And please do comment. Tell me how you experience this thing of beauty and refinement in relation to each other. Like at what point, if you're an artist, for example, at what point do you just look at that thing and you say, it's finished, I'm done with it? Or do you just feel compelled to constantly go back to it and to chip away, to critique it, to criticize it? I think it's very good for us to become conscious of where we're critical, where we are in constant state of refinement, where we feel like everything needs to be made better. And do we have the ability to appreciate and love things prior to being refined so that we can engage with it, stay with it, appreciate it while making it better? And when it comes to relationships, let me know if you go through these modes where you have to accept other people's imperfections. And if you have done that, how has it actually made your relationship and your love stronger? I think it's important for all of us to hear different experiences, not only how these things unfold astrologically, but as life skills, because we're talking about Virgo. We got to get a little bit practical here right now. We can teach each other how to love imperfections, how to be imperfect and still be sufficient and enough. And if you want a reading of the upcoming transits in your chart, or you just want to understand your natal chart, the blueprint that's been designated to you, you can go to my website at parisayazdi.com for more information to get your reading, as well as my classes and life narrative counseling, or you can go to the description box below. I have my email there for your convenience, and you can email me directly. And with this video, I'm just going to leave us with a wish, because I will be coming back to talk a lot more about Venus and the sign of Virgo with all the aspects that it'll be making. And my wish for us is this. I hope that we gain the wisdom to know when refinement serves love and when it's quietly standing in its way. And may we learn to recognize beauty before we try to improve it. And in doing so, discover that what is imperfect can still be deeply worthy of our hearts, within ourselves and within others. And that's it for today. Sending you much love. Till next time.